In the next 48 hours, something you have been carrying for 18 months will finish itself, with you or without you. It may not look like an ending at first. It may look like a message you finally send, a yes you finally stop waiting to hear, a room you finally stop pretending you want to be in, a resignation letter you draft at 2 a.m. and almost delete before your thumb presses send. The strangest thing about these final hours is how familiar they feel while they are happening. You have stood here before, in the days before something big, and you remember the texture of it, the way ordinary sentences suddenly carry weight, the way you keep checking your phone for news that has not happened yet, the way sleep becomes lighter, as if part of you is already standing at the door of the next few days, listening. August 26th, 2026. This is important, so I am going to say it plainly. The full moon eclipse is not tomorrow's event. It is already in motion. Whatever you are carrying right now has been carried for weeks and months, and the sky is not about to hand you a brand new problem. It is about to hand you the ending of an old one. And endings, as we will get to in a moment, arrive long before the door actually closes. By the time you see the moon turn that deep, coppery red on the night of the 27th into the 28th, the real work of this window will already be happening inside you, whether you have named it or not. Let's place the facts plainly, because precision matters when everything else feels loose. The full moon of August, the old calendars call it the Sturgeon Moon, reaches its peak at 12:19 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday, August 28th. And that same full moon passes deeply into Earth's shadow, a partial lunar eclipse that swallows more than 96% of the lunar surface, turning the moon a deep red for observers across the Americas, parts of Europe and Africa. Maximum eclipse arrives at 4:13 a.m. Universal Time. Whatever time zone you sit in, the night of the 27th into the 28th is the moment of completion. But here is the part almost nobody tells you. This eclipse is the closing door of an 18-month cycle. It is not one event. It is the last page of a very long chapter that began before you could feel it, and everything in your life that has been quietly ending since then has been walking towards this exact night. Consider the shape of this month, because it matters. On August 12th, the sun was eclipsed, a total solar eclipse crossing parts of the northern hemisphere, and a story opened in that moment. A crack, a beginning, a door that swung ajar. Tonight's lunar eclipse completes what that beginning set in motion. The month has been bookended. One eclipse to open, one eclipse to close. Whatever began around the 12th, the decision you made, the encounter you cannot stop thinking about, the fracture in the old structure of your life, arrives at its conclusion now. You may not have connected those two dates until this sentence. That is fine. The calendar was doing its work, whether you were watching or not. Here's the mechanism, stripped of ornament. A full moon is the moment of maximum visibility. The moon fully lit, fully seen, hiding nothing. An eclipse is the moment the Earth itself passes between you and the light, which means something is finally allowed to go dark. Put those two together, and this window asks a question you may have been avoiding for a long time. What in your life is only still glowing because nobody has dared to stand in front of it? What are you holding in the light at your own expense, lighting it up so you do not have to admit it is finished? An eclipse does not end anything that was working. It ends the pretending that things were working. And pretending, if we are honest, is where most of our energy has actually been going. Not into the situation itself, but into the performance of the situation. There is an old understanding that the days immediately before an eclipse carry the eclipse's energy ahead of the actual date. I used to think of this as decoration, a poetic way to make the calendar feel alive. Then I watched it happen too many times to call it poetry. People do not wait for the eclipse to begin their endings. The phone calls start 3 days early. The clarity lands at 2 a.m. 2 nights before. The sentence you have been unable to say for a year suddenly says itself in the car, on the way to work, at a red light, with no audience, no drama, just the sudden, undeniable knowing that it is over, and that you knew it was over months ago. Here is a ground-level observation that has nothing to do with astrology and everything to do with how people actually behave in the days before a threshold. People clean, not tidy, reorganize, kitchen cupboards at 11 at night, phone galleries emptied by the thousands, subscriptions cancelled in a single sitting, app by app, with a strange satisfaction that feels almost like relief. I have watched it in my own circles this week. A friend who never cooks rearranging her pantry shelf by shelf. Another who has not written a single private word in years, quietly downloading a notes app at midnight. On the surface, it looks like productivity. It is not productivity. It is the body's attempt to create order it can feel, while waiting for an order it cannot control. We cannot touch the eclipse, so we touch the nearest thing we can still manage. The spice rack, the inbox, the drawer that has been chaotic for 2 years. Rather than dismiss this as avoidance, recognize it for what it is. Preparation that does not know how to say its own name. If you catch yourself reorganizing something small in these final hours, do not stop it. Let the impulse finish. The hand that straightens the shelf is the same hand that will eventually let go. So, what exactly is ending in this window? Start with the obvious, the 18-month cycle itself. Whatever began around the time of the previous eclipse family, a role, a relationship, a version of yourself you agreed to perform, has been running its course for a year and a half, and this eclipse closes the account. People who have been quietly outgrowing each other will feel it as a final fracture or a final choice. The work that was always temporary will reveal itself as exactly that. The beliefs you inherited rather than chose will suddenly feel heavy in a way you cannot unfeel. And because this closing moon also stands at the end of a summer that has already asked a great deal of everyone, it carries the particular weight of a season finishing. Not just an astrological chapter, but a calendar one, a financial one, a relational one. Whole structures of your ordinary life are being audited, and the audit concludes on the 28th. Let me clear away the thing that confuses these final hours for so many people, because I see it in the comments every single eclipse. This is not a beginning, and it is not a judgment. It is not a disaster forecast in gold lettering, and it is not a guarantee that everything you touch will collapse on Friday. What it actually is, plainly, is a spotlight with a timer, a short, unusually strong period of visibility in which things that were already true become impossible to ignore. If your situation was healthy, it will look healthier. If it was quietly finished, it will finally say so. The event does not create the condition. It reveals the condition, and that is why the same sky produces such different stories in different lives. Some people will meet Friday morning lighter because they finally named what they already knew. Others will meet it heavy because they rehearsed a version of events that was never going to happen. I want to offer you a way of reading these 3 days that I have not seen anyone lay out quite like this because it has carried me through windows like this with far less thrashing. Think of August 26th, 27th, and 28th, not as 3 separate days, but as one sentence with 3 words: recognition, confrontation, release. The 26th is the seeing, the pattern finally visible, the truth finally undeniable, the exhaustion finally admitted. The 27th is the saying, the conversation, the decision, the sentence spoken out loud, even if only to yourself, even if only in a mirror. The 28th is the letting go, the moment the moon goes dark, and whatever you have named is finally allowed to leave. Most people live these 3 days backwards. They try to release on the 26th before they have confronted anything, and then wonder why the relief does not come. It does not come because release is not the first step. It is the last one. You cannot skip the seeing, and you cannot skip the saying. You can only rush them. And rushing is precisely why so many of these windows end with the same thing returning 6 months later, wearing a slightly different coat. There's a second observation worth making, and it is the one I keep noticing in the messages I receive before every significant sky event, including this one. People who have not spoken in months suddenly reach out, not to the people they love necessarily, but to the people they have unfinished sentences with. An old friend, an ex, a family member they have been orbiting with silence. I used to find this confusing. Now I understand it. An ending makes every unfinished conversation feel urgent, not because the other person matters as much as they once did, but because the closing of one chapter makes us suddenly aware of every sentence we never finished anywhere else. You will likely feel this pull in the next 48 hours. If you do, watch the difference between reaching out because something is genuinely unfinished and reaching out because your nervous system is looking for a door to slam. One is completion. The other is displacement. The eclipse will show you which one you are actually doing, if you are honest enough to keep watching yourself. Speaking of quiet, notice the silence in your group chats over the next 48 hours, not the empty silence of nothing happening, the full silence of everyone privately packing. A room where everyone is privately packing looks identical to a room where nothing is happening, and this may be the most reliable sign that a threshold is near. People go quiet when endings are close because there is nothing left to say inside the old conversation. The real conversation is happening silently, in parallel, in each person's chest. If your circles have gone strangely still this week, do not read it as disconnection. Read it as readiness. And if you are the one who has gone quiet, trust that your silence is not laziness. It is your attention turning inward, stocking the room for what arrives tomorrow night. There is one more ordinary place this window shows up that almost nobody talks about, and it deserves its own moment because it is where the tension feels most concrete: your work and your money. Watch what happens to the unfinished financial conversations over these 3 days. The invoice you resent sending, the fee you have been too polite to name for work that long outgrew it, the plans still built around a version of yourself that no longer exists. Eclipses do not balance ledgers, but they expose the imbalance in the ledger. And I have seen more quiet courage arrive in the days before a big moon than in the whole year preceding it. You do not need to send the email tonight. You need to admit the number was wrong, out loud, at least to yourself. And that admission is the part only you can do. Let me share the layer I have been tracking this week, the human one, the one that has nothing to do with charts and everything to do with what I actually see in the lives around me and in the messages that land in my inbox. 3 sentences have been repeating like a refrain from people who do not know each other, from different countries, different ages, different circumstances. Is it too late? I feel like I'm waiting for something. Everything is fine, but nothing feels fine. I find these three sentences fascinating because they are the same sentence wearing three different coats. All of them describe a person standing in a doorway that has not opened yet, not trapped, not broken, just between rooms. If you have said any version of those sentences this week, you are not falling apart. You are exactly where the calendar says you are. The other thing I have watched this week is the small collapse of the normal. Appointments cancelled at the last minute. Illnesses that arrive 3 days before something important and leave 2 days after. As if the body knew the calendar better than the mind does. Machines breaking at the worst possible moment. So many times this month that I have stopped calling it bad luck. I know how this sounds, and I am not asking you to believe in cosmic sabotage. I am asking you to consider a simpler explanation. When a big ending is close, the small things stop holding. Fuses blow because systems under pressure finally show their weak point. The car brakes because it was always going to break, and some part of you is clearing the schedule for what is coming. Rather than fight this week's small chaos, let it happen. It is not the main event interrupting your life. It is your life making room for the main event. Here is a smaller observation, the kind you can test tonight without any belief system attached. People under the pressure of a coming threshold rarely feel the pressure in their thoughts first. They feel it in the body, a jaw that stays tight, sleep that breaks at the same hour every night, an exhaustion that sleep does not fix. I have noticed the week before, a major eclipse carries more than its share of small illnesses, phantom aches, and tiredness that rest cannot touch. Not because the body is weak, but because it is carrying what the mind has refused to carry. Stop diagnosing yourself as broken. The body is not malfunctioning. It is completing the sentence you would not finish out loud in the only language it has. Give it the honest conversation, the cancelled obligation, the nap without guilt, and watch how quickly the symptom decides it is no longer needed. Now, the part that matters most, and the part I hope you will actually carry into tomorrow night. The difference between a forced ending and a real one. So many of us will be tempted, in the heat of an eclipse window, to solve the tension by cutting something, to send the dramatic message, to quit in a flourish, to declare the chapter closed at the top of your voice before the chapter has actually finished its last page. A forced ending is a door you slam because you are afraid of the draft. A real ending is a door that closes itself when you finally stop holding it open. You can feel the difference in your own body. Forced endings arrive with a charge, with heat, with a need to prove something to someone, usually to yourself. Real endings arrive with a very quiet certainty. They do not need an audience. They do not need to feel dramatic. They simply stand there, finished, and the only thing left to you is the choice to stop pretending otherwise. This is why I want to be honest with you about the discomfort of the next 48 hours. Nothing about this window guarantees comfort. The clarity may arrive wearing a heavy coat. You may find yourself sadder than you expected about something you were certain you wanted to end. You may also find yourself unnervingly calm about something you were certain would destroy you, and that calm may frighten you more than the sadness would have. Both are legitimate. There is no correct emotional response to an ending, and anyone who tells you otherwise has not sat with enough of their own. Let me offer the distinction that has carried me through my own endings. Genuine endings feel settled underneath, even when they are sad. Old triggers feel charged. If what surfaces tomorrow night feels bigger than the situation that triggered it, honor it without mistaking it for the main event. The main event is the thing you have been circling for months. It was never going to arrive quietly. There is a reason we misread our own timing, and I want to give you the version I have arrived at through years of watching these windows, because it is not the version usually offered. We believe an ending should announce itself the way a door closes, with a sound, a finality, a clear before and after. But real endings, as far as I can observe, announce themselves the way seasons do. Not with an event, but with a temperature change you notice only after it has already happened. By the time you can point to the day it ended, you have been living in the new season for weeks without naming it. That is why these eclipse windows feel so strange. The calendar gives you the date, but your own physics had the ending long before the date arrived. The discomfort is not that the ending is happening. The discomfort is the lag between what you already know and what you have allowed yourself to say. Close that gap in these final hours, and the eclipse becomes not an event to survive, but an event to complete. So what do you actually do in these final hours? Let me give you practical language, not poetry, because this window rewards precision. First, name the ending. Take one honest sentence and write it down, brutally specific. Not, "It's time to move on." Everyone writes that, and nobody believes it. Write, "The role I play in this dynamic ended, and I keep auditioning for it anyway." Write, "I am done performing agreement with a decision I never made." Write the version that makes your stomach drop, because that is the true one. Put it in the Notes app, on paper, anywhere. Naming is the 27th, and you are allowed to do it early. But do it. The unnameable is the unbearable. The moment you give it a sentence, it shrinks to its actual size. Second, make no forever decisions between now and the eclipse peak. I want to underline this because I see the opposite advice everywhere, and I think it is badly wrong for this specific window. The one exception is the ending you have already spent months circling. That one is allowed to be finalized, even encouraged. But no new commitments, no dramatic exits that surprise even you, no life switch-ups decided in a fever at midnight. An eclipse is a closing energy, not an opening one. Anything new that is started under this sky starts with a built-in expiration date, because it is being launched from a nervous system that is mid-release. Wait, the new chapter does not need to be written by Friday. It only needs to be arrived at. Third, expect a final wave. The 24 hours before the eclipse often carry the loudest version of everything. The last argument, the last temptation, the last tug of the old pattern. Sometimes all three in a single afternoon. When it comes, and it may come tonight or tomorrow, recognize it for what it is. The echo, not the event. The event is the release. The echo is everything the ending drags behind it on its way out the door. If you mistake the echo for the event, you will treat a tantrum as a revelation and make decisions from the loudest voice in the room, which is almost never the truest one. Fourth, and the one I recommend most strongly of all, write your release list and then put it somewhere you will not see it again this year. Not a journal you will reopen in a week. A single piece of paper, folded, placed in a drawer, an envelope, a coat pocket, you will not reach into until winter. There is a specific reason for this, and it is not superstition. An ending you write down and bury is an ending you have stopped negotiating with. The paper does the holding so your nervous system can stop. If you want to give it a moment of ceremony, do it on the night of the 27th, as the moon begins to darken, with the lights off and the phone in another room. 10 minutes. One sentence that names the ending. One sentence that thanks it for what it taught you. And I know that sentence can feel impossible. So let me reframe it. Not thanks for the pain. Thanks for the information. One final sentence that releases it. That is the whole ritual. And the whole ritual is enough, because the eclipse was never asking for hours of ceremony. It was asking for an honest sentence. Now let me take you somewhere worth going before we close. The other side. Consider for a moment what it will feel like on the morning of the 29th, when the moon has brightened again and the sky looks ordinary. The ending that has been circling you will still be an ending. No eclipse erases logistics, but its weight will be different. What felt like a wall will feel like a door you walked through. The person who has been occupying your mental real estate will take up less space. The role you have been performing will stop requiring your performance. And the strange hollowness you have been carrying, the one that feels like waiting, will finally have somewhere to go. I am not offering you a fantasy where everything resolves by Sunday. I am offering the honest version, the one worth actually wanting. You will be done with the pretending. And the pretending, for most of us, has been exhausting us far longer than the situation itself ever did. There is also an unexpected gift on the other side of a window like this, and I have watched it happen enough times to name it plainly. When you finally stop gripping what was already ending, the people around you who were gripping the same thing often feel it too. I have seen families exhale together without a single conversation about it. I have seen friendships shift into something lighter within a week of someone finally saying the sentence everyone had been privately carrying. The release is rarely as lonely as the grip was. Most of what we hold so tightly is held by several people at once, each of them waiting for someone else to loosen first. When you loosen, you may be surprised at how quickly the room follows. Not because you controlled anyone, because you gave everyone permission to stop pretending. And permission is contagious. One more layer deserves naming, because I do not think enough is said about it. The fear of the blank space. Stripped of all spiritual vocabulary, much of our resistance to an ending is not attachment to the thing itself. It is dread of the empty week after. We stay in the wrong room not because we love the room, but because the hallway is unlit. If you feel that fear tonight, name it honestly. You are not mourning the ending. You are afraid of the pause before the next beginning. The stretch of days where you will not know what you are anymore. That pause is not a failure of the process. It is the process. Nothing grows in the soil while the old plant is still standing, and nothing new can take root in a plot you never cleared. The hallway is unlit because the house is being rearranged. Walk it anyway. It is shorter than you think. And if you are worried that this window will somehow pass you by, that everyone else will be transformed while you remain exactly where you are, hear this clearly. You are already inside it. The fact that you felt something reading these words, the fact that you have scrolled this far, the fact that your chest tightened at any single sentence is the mechanism working. You do not have to perform this ending for anyone. You do not have to post about it, announce it, or make it visible for it to be real. Some of the most profound releases of these 48 hours will happen in complete silence, in the space between two breaths, and they will count just as much as the loudest goodbye. One honest word about the days after, because nobody prepares you for them. The morning after a release does not always feel triumphant. Some endings leave a quiet disbelief. The way a room looks different once the furniture is carried out. The same walls, suddenly strange. Do not mistake strangeness for regret. Regret wants to go back. Strangeness simply wants you to notice the new dimensions of the space you are standing in. Give yourself 3 empty days. Do not fill them with noise or with the first available replacement. The rush to fill the hallway is why so many people land in the next wrong room within a month. The hallway is not wasted time. It is the only time the room gets to air out. If any part of this landed for you, tell me in the comments what you are releasing in this window. Even one word, even one sentence. I read every single one, and the pattern across the comments before an eclipse always reveals something true about how these endings actually move through real lives. Subscribe if you want the other side, explained the same way, when the dust settles and the new shape of things becomes visible. And if you know someone who has been circling an ending for months, someone who needs permission more than advice, share this with them before tomorrow night. The most useful thing you can give a person in these final hours is not a prediction. It is a mirror and a reminder that they are allowed to let go. Tomorrow night, the moon will do what moons have done for all of human memory. It will darken, it will redden, and then it will brighten again. The sky is not nervous about any of it. The sky has done this before. The reason these final hours feel so heavy is not that your ending is bigger than other endings. It is that it is yours, and your own endings always weigh more than everyone else's. That weight is the proof that something real was here, that it mattered, that it is ending for a genuine reason and not a careless one. So tonight, sleep if you can. Tomorrow, say what needs saying. Tomorrow night, watch the sky if you are able, and let the darkening do the rest. The moon will return. So will you, lighter, finished with the pretending, and finally on the other side of the sentence you were too afraid to write. We will get there together. 24 hours, one ending, and the only person who gets to choose it is you.